Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in and checking out my video today. So, the fight I want to talk to you guys about is going to be between Chris Algieri versus Errol Spence. So, leading up to this fight, a lot of the talk coming into this matchup is that Errol Spence is going to completely dominate, outclass Chris Algieri, and he will win, most likely by an early stoppage. That's what I'm seeing a lot on Facebook, Twitter. And in my opinion, I think this is going to be a massive step up in competition for Earl Spence in this fight, and I'm really excited to see how he's going to look in this matchup against Chris Algieri. Now, let's talk about Chris Algieri right off the bat. So, Chris Algieri is a fighter, of course. We all know he was locked in the cage at one point in his career, and he fought Manny Pacquiao with his great trainer there, Tim Lane. Yeah, unfortunate for Chris Algieri that he got in talk with that guy. But anyways, when you look at Chris Algieri as a fighter, he's a guy who shows great heart. He's a guy who, when you look at him back in his earlier fights, he's a guy who has good foot speed. He's a guy who will use lateral movement, can box out his back foot at times. But under John David Jackson, I really like the change in style of Chris Algieri. He's much more aggressive now, adding that to his game. Also, when you look at some things that I saw on tape when I was watching the fights recently of Chris Algieri, I see him using more leverage. I see also an improved left hook. And his right hand has become a vicious weapon for him, in my opinion, and his best punch. Um, Also, Algieri is still using that jab. And with John David Jackson, he's also tucking his chin in more. He has more of an inside game. He's using more head movement. So a vast, complete improvement in Chris Algieri from what I've seen recently in his performances. Now, when you look at Errol Spence as a fighter, we see a guy, extensive amateur background. He's a guy, southpaw, quick hand speed, good boxing IQ. Thought to be by many as the best prospect in boxing. Very high praise from different trainers and fighters, etc. Also, Earl Spence, when you see him, he has good power. He's a guy who has vicious body shots, good combination puncher, and Earl Spence, in my opinion, is most effective when he is landing a body shot and then comes back with an uppercut or straight. Working off that body combinations, that's when he's best as a fighter, in my opinion. And so he's got a lot of good qualities to him to like as a fighter. Now, there is one flaw that I see in Errol Spence is that he does get hit a lot, and especially by some of the opposition he's facing. These guys are C-level fighters. So that is something that you got to look out for in the career of Errol Spence. Mind you, he's early. It's young in his career. He's early on in the game. He's going to keep improving as he continues fighting. So right now, that is the one big flaw on him is he does get hit quite a bit by some of these C-level fighters. Once again, that will improve though over time, just like Chris Algieri is improving with John David Jackson in his corner. So ultimately, when I look at this fight, I don't believe that Errol Spence is going to stop Chris Algieri. And if he does do so in this fight, you got to give him a ton of credit in this matchup. And you really got to say, wow, that's pretty impressive that he's stopping a guy like Chris Algieri, who's been in there with punchers like Ruslan Provodnikov, who is a come forward, straight ahead type fighter. Then you got a guy like Manny Pacquiao. He uses speed, angles, movement, and he's a southpaw, and he rocked Algieri multiple times, but Algieri got up. And then you got the only difference in Errol Spence between those two guys is obviously the styles are all different, but Spence is more of a power puncher to the body. Ruslan and Pacquiao are not great body punchers, but Errol Spence is a vicious body puncher. So that's something interesting to watch in this fight to see how Chris Algieri holds up to those body shots. Definitely going to take the wind out of him early in this fight. He's got to be contained in this matchup and make sure he's defending those. Interesting to note in this fight, I'm looking forward to see what Chris Algieri is going to bring when he comes into the ring. Is he going to be the aggressive Chris Algieri that we've seen lately? Or is he going to be a guy who's going to go revert back to that old style, use that lateral movement, box and move? Is that going to be the style he's going to bring? Is he going to mix it up? And that's something that now, when you're facing Chris Algieri, you have to game plan for. What style is he going to bring into the ring? So it's hard for opponents to really know what to expect now in Chris Algieri's game. Ultimately, though, guys, I gotta say, in this fight, I believe that Errol Spence wins a unanimous decision in this matchup. Too many advantages in this fight from size, power, overall skills that he brings to the table. Um, Also, I believe that Errol Spence just he has too many advantages. Like I was saying, pretty much everything he does is almost better than Chris Algieri at this current point of his career, in my opinion. Although Algieri, I will say the advantage that he does have in this fight is Algieri has experience advantage. Also, he's showing that he can go through tremendous amount of adversity and has great heart. So that's two advantages that Algieri has, and those two things are immeasurable in the sport of boxing. So ultimately, I have a great respect for Chris Algieri. He's been thrown into the wolves recently, fighting all these top level guys, vicious punchers, tough, real tough fighters. Promoter's not done him any favors. So ultimately, I'm looking forward to this fight. I think that Chris Algieri is going to give Errol Spence a good test. Watch for that overhand right. That's something I think Chris Algieri is going to be trying to land on Errol Spence, and I believe he will actually have some success in this fight, win some rounds in this matchup. Ultimately, though, I think Errol Spence wins this fight by unanimous decision. Let me know what you guys think on the fight. Very intrigued by this matchup. Who do you guys have winning this fight, and what method are they going to win the fight in? Thank you very much for tuning in once again. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, guys. Thank you very much.